How's it going? Rogue here. This is going to be a similar video to the Warlock one, which I just put out, but this one's for the Hunter. So, basically giving you a general insight into, like, what you'd expect to do as a Hunter, some of the gameplay mechanics, what you'd be more suited for, that sort of thing. Just getting you started off as a new player or a returning player. Um, right, so generally speaking, uh, as opposed to warlocks, hunters and titans, hunters are more geared towards, or I guess the most geared towards, single target damage. So your main focus is going to be attacking one target, doing a whole bunch of damage to it, then moving on, as well as focusing on like movement tech. So like getting around fast, figuring out ways to like get into and out of a situation quickly. Again, that's not to say the other classes, if built into these things, can't do them. It's just hunters tend to do them the best when built um, more specifically to them. All right, so getting more into the individual subclasses for a hunter. I'm going to start out here with solar. Now, quickly before we get really into each of these subclasses, for every subclass, the hunter is going to have dodges and jumps that will be the same across each of them. So your jumps, you're always going to have your triple jump, strafe, and high jump, um, with the exception of, I believe, blink on arc, which we'll get to later. So when it comes to these jumps, triple jump is usually the most solid. Essentially, with strafe and high jump, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just the best way to put this. They're kind of like in Smash Bros. You get just one extra jump. Can be good, can be useful, especially if like you're trying to propel yourself forward. For example, with strafe jump, but triple jump is just objectively speaking the best. Um, because you have strong directional control as well as like that little bit extra movement. You can get a little bit farther, maybe a little bit higher, if used to its fullest extent. Um, your class abilities, so this is unique to the hunter. The gambler's dodge and the marksman dodge, these are going to be on every single subclass that you have. So the marksman dodge, uh, as you can see here, reload your weapon. Gambler dodge, if you do it near an enemy, it will recharge your melee ability. Each of these very unique and useful when used in different situations. You can, by all means, use them however you'd like. They both have about the same cooldown. They're very short. You get them back insanely fast, especially if you have other aspects, fragments, or exotics tailored to getting your abilities back. So you'll never really have to worry about getting these things back or maintaining uptime with them. This, the Acrobat's dodge, is unique to the Solar Hunter. Basically, you do a little flip, gets you Radiant. In terms of like dodging, as in like avoiding a enemy attack, you can technically do it, but I would say these things are more used for their like their primary use. So like reloading your weapon, maintaining your melee ability, or giving yourself radiance. Which again, as mentioned in the Warlock video, um, radiance is essentially a damage booster. So now with that out of the way, move into the solar subclass for hunters. You've got a couple different options for your super. So Blade Barrage here, this is your one-off super. You jump into the air and you essentially just throw a bunch of exploding knives. Um, can be good if there's like a grouped up uh, like gaggle of enemies that you want to just get rid of, or if you're doing damage, um, can be good for that. This is a little bit longer of a one-off super than some other ones, like for example the Nova Bomb for the Warlock, um, because you're throwing two sets of knives. So make sure whatever you're looking at, if you want it to be one target, you maintain your reticle on that target. You can look at two different sets of targets though. So like if there's a group of enemies and then another group of enemies that are like grouped up, by all means you could jump up, use your ult, hit one, and quickly look over before that second set goes off and get both of those groups. This golden gun here is going to be sorry, your primary one for damage. So like if you're looking for like a solid DPS option, especially with like Celestial Nighthawk, this is what you're going to use because it deals precision damage as opposed to this golden gun option. This one's more of a PvP variant because you get more bullets, last shorter, and whenever you shoot someone with it, they ignite. So this is more of a PvP option. This is more of a PvE option. Now with this one, the precision damage stacks. So if you hit one precision shot, that'll do like the base damage. If you hit a second one, it'll do a little bit more damage. And if you hit the third shot, then you do even more damage. I mentioned Celestial Nighthawk. That's essentially turns your golden gun into just a one shot that does massively increased damage. So I would recommend definitely using this one as opposed to this one with it, just because you can get that precision damage. Moving on into like the more niche stuff for the Solar Hunter, you're essentially just buffing your reload stuff and then trying to get more melee abilities back so that you can keep uptime on your radiance. What I mean by that is essentially you're trying to keep yourself buffed so that you're just constantly doing more damage. You're reloading your weapons faster, which, again, as a hunter, your abilities and your gunplay mesh the best together out of all of the classes. So, like, for example, with On Your Mark here, the solar aspect, precision kills will increase your handling and reload speed. Basically, your whole thing is synergy. You can mix up what you're trying to use with it, but generally speaking, if you want like if you're trying to build a little bit more into your super, knock them down, definitely good. Just gives you more damage resistance or like other buffs for your super. This is more of a general gameplay, and then gunpowder gamble, I wouldn't necessarily recommend in like higher end content. This is definitely fun. Like, by all means, if you want to just use this, have fun, go at it. But essentially, when you build up enough stacks, you get an extra grenade or like a special grenade that you throw, and it's like 3 trip mines that you duct tape together. And then you can either shoot it or just let it go off on its own. It'll ignite everything. Again, the whole thing with solar is like healing and then buffing. So primarily with the gunslinger, your thing is going to be like unique weapon buffs with solar. Also, a good thing about On Your Mark is that it gives you 3 fragment slots, so you're able to have 5 different fragments here, which is a lot. You're gonna see that, like especially with hunters, depending on your combinations, you'll be able to have many more fragments than usual, which allows for like more unique combinations of how your gameplay meshes together. All right, moving on into Arc. Again, just general idea of Arc: do everything faster and clear out an area of ads. Now, with the Arc Hunter, for this super ability, Gathering Storm, this is another one-off super. This really good for damage to a boss, like at the very start of DPS or like during a final stand. If you huck this thing at him, it'll stick into the boss, assuming you hit it, and then it'll constantly emit jolts of electricity. Or if you need like a safe area for yourself from ads, you can throw this into the ground. It'll jolt all the enemies, kill them. Very powerful, but if you have multiple hunters, would recommend like spacing them out. So like if I'm a hunter and then my friend is a hunter and we're trying to like damage a raid boss, maybe time it out so that the damage from one of these things doesn't like overlap with the damage of another. So like you're just trying to maximize your damage. Arc staff, it's not the greatest. If I'm being completely honest, this is a roaming super. If you're doing PvP, would definitely recommend Arc Staff as opposed to Gathering Storm though. You're roaming around with this big spear, and you're able to reflect projectiles, as well as like emit a close range blast, which with Arc Hunter, a majority of the stuff that you're doing is very close ranged. So if that's what you're trying to do, like get up and personal with your enemies, would definitely recommend this. Very good at clearing out ads at melee distance, because pretty much all the builds involving Arc Hunter are like melee builds. So you're getting up, you're really close to a whole group of enemies, punching, dodging, and then punching again. That's going to refresh your punch and your dodge. It's going to jolt the enemies, clear out a wave of ads, and that's pretty much it. However, with that, make sure you are running Gambler's Dodge so that you're maintaining your melee ability. As for the specific melee ability, definitely Combination Blow, because it stacks up your melee damage. There's definitely nothing wrong with disorienting. Blinding enemies, very good, very useful. But the thing is, with if you have Combination Blow and then this aspect here, you're already jolting enemies and you're meleeing them, so you're already blinding them. As for your grenade, doesn't necessarily matter too much. Each of them very unique. That are definitely exotics that are like tailored to different grenades, like skip grenades. You can build into them. Generally speaking, Arc Hunter is just trying to move fast. While amplified, you are like just automatically doing things faster, like moving, reloading. So generally speaking, this is just your I want to get up and I want to punch things. Moving on to Void. This is going to be more of your I want to survive subclass. Your super, starting out with that, you've got a couple different options. Your Shadow Shot, you've got two different variations of it. The Mobius Quiver, you're firing 2 volleys of arrows. So the first volley, it'll like stick into a ground or an enemy, it'll do damage, then it'll weaken them. Your second volley will do massively increased damage against whatever's already weakened. Generally speaking, as a Void Hunter, your whole thing is going to be like going invisible, getting damage resistance, trying to disorient enemies, making sure that they don't know where you are, as well as weakening them with your super. Now that you do have a roaming ability super, again, this is going to be more of like a PvP thing. Also, I just completely glazed over this super ability. This one is between the two, probably better at like an ad clear instance. This is going to be better at like a damage instance, unless you want just the debuff to stick on the boss. The only thing that I would recommend possibly being wary of, sometimes bosses get a little bit buggy, like for example Nezarec. If you tether a boss, he doesn't like being tethered because he runs around. So he'll like kind of freak out, might mess up a damage rotation. Just generally speaking though, this is a really good option as a debuff. I believe it's like a 30% damage bonus that you would be doing against a boss. Yeah, so like generally, either of these good. The spectral blades, basically you summon 2 little knives and you're able to just go around the map really quickly with. Sorry, I'm like burping and coughing a bunch, but anyways, yeah, this generally speaking better for PvP. You're moving around quickly, you're going invisible, which invisibility is going to be your best friend with this. You've got a whole bunch of different options to go invisible, between using your melee ability, you different aspects make you invisible, like your dodge, your defeating something makes you invisible. Um, Using your melee ability makes you invisible. When you're invisible, none of the ads will attack you, so it kind of gives you that like safe, I guess, time for you to regen health, figure out what's going on, possibly go revive a teammate, something like that. The only thing I'd be wary of is like if you're fighting a boss or like an enemy that you need to have aggro on. If you go invisible, then they can't see you and you won't have that aggro. Along with this, like I guess a secondary thing to invisibility would be weakening. So like if you hit something with this smoke bomb, for example, you weaken the target. You're you're weakening them, making them more susceptible to damage. This different aspects and stuff that involve either invisibility or weakening. I'd probably lean more into those than I would like an overshield for void. Moving on to stasis. Generally speaking, this is this is gonna be your slow and your freeze. Like you're trying to do a little bit more of just like add control than you would like boss damage with this, as of right now. Again, with stasis, you've got a bunch of different options for your fragments depending on your aspects that you use. A lot of what you're going to be trying to do here is like using your abilities to get targets frozen so that you can then shatter them, as well as keeping your melee ability up. Good thing about stasis is that if you have the exotic renewal grasps, you can use the Duskfield grenade here to essentially throw down it, or throw this grenade down, then you'll have a lot of damage resistance. Basically, this whole subclass is going to be about like freezing enemies, giving yourself and your teammates some damage resistance, keeping your abilities up, and that's pretty much it. You're just trying to slow and you freeze targets here. No unique jumps or dodges. Your super ability here, Silence and Squall, it's a one-off. You're throwing 2 different things. So the first thing that you throw is a massive like pickaxe. Wherever it hits, that thing's gonna get frozen immediately. The second thing that you throw is gonna look like one of your shurikens here. That's gonna create a massive ice tornado, which generally it'll freeze stuff instantly and then shatter them on its own. Again, if you throw this at a boss, then it'll freeze them, but they won't stop moving. Like they just don't have that tech. It'll do extra damage to them, but it won't like stop them in their tracks. Again, with the melee ability here, you do have multiple of them, which is pretty nice. They don't do a whole lot of damage, but again, this is right now definitely could use a buff. This is probably going to see more use during Final Shape with Prismatic. Still fun. Also, there is a movement tech called Shatter Skating, where if you have a sword, like this one that has the perk Eager Edge, you're able to just essentially launch yourself across the map. So A little bit of extra movement tech that you get from Stasis. It's not bad by any means. Definitely fun in certain circumstances. And finally, we've got Strand. Also, by the way, Stasis comes with Beyond Light, the expansion. And then Strand here comes with Lightfall. So Strand, your main thing is probably going to be like movement tech as well as unraveling things. So your super ability, you only have the one here. This is a roaming super. It can get a little difficult to use at times. You summon a rope dart. You got drastically increased grenade ability, but your grenade, no matter what it is, turns into the grapple grenade. Which there's a lot of stuff with the hunter that involves grappling. So like this aspect, you get extra grenade charge, and your grapple hook, if it is the grapple hook that you have, gains more utility. Would definitely just like watch out for that. So if you cast it, you're trying to like throw a shacklenade at something, you'll instead have the grapple. Also, if you don't have a grenade charge at the time, this doesn't automatically refresh it. So like if you're falling to your death and you activate this, it's you won't have that grenade ability to quickly save yourself with a grapple. In terms of like the actual use of the super, whatever is like directly in front of you is what you're going to be using your light attack on, and then your area attack is going to be like anything that's on the same level as you. So if you happen to be like above something, you're not going to be able to hit it with either one of these attacks. It has to be like on the same, I guess like Y axis as you. So yeah, you can't be below or above something. You have to be like on the same level as it. Now, if you are in the air, you can still attack things, but just make sure you're in that same area. Your Strand melee, very unique in that you throw this little spike, it bounces around to different enemies, and then you can like grab it again when it comes back to you for some bonus melee energy. Now, I mentioned unraveling. For the most part, you've got this ability here. You're going to be making tangles with this subclass. Now, as opposed to, you can be making the other unique subclass like spawn things. So like, for example, Strand here has tangles. Solar has fire sprites, ionic traces, void breaches, and then stasis crystals. You're primarily going to be making stasis shards and tangles out of all of those. With tangles, you can essentially like break a tangle, throw a tangle with this aspect, and it'll turn into this like Beyblade. Honestly, very good in all content, shooting out projectiles that damage things, which the unraveling projectiles, if you hit a target that is unraveled, it begins to like cause damage over time to them, as well as shoots little projectiles outwards towards other enemies, which will then like feed that effect onto them. So it's a good like add clear utility. The other things that you can do, like for example Sever, as you can see here with your melee ability, you're reducing damage output. But primarily, the two things to look out for here with a Strand Hunter, your Shadow Clone, which happens when you use your class ability. You create like this little clone. No matter what content it is, no matter what difficulty it is, enemies will attack it. You're not doing too much with Threadlings, like the little rat things as a hunter. So yeah, you're definitely doing more that's like moving around, trying to like dive bombing, grappling, that sort of thing. And then of course using your Beyblades. That's pretty much it for the subclasses. In terms of abilities, definitely would recommend Discipline and Resilience. You can't go wrong with extra health, and then discipline. No matter what you're using, you're probably going to be using a grenade at some point, as opposed to like a melee or a super. By all means, if you want to use your super more often or your melee ability, you can build into those. But for like here, it's always nice to have a healing grenade up faster, especially when a lot of your abilities involve instantly getting you your melee back. Like solar, you can get your melee back instantly. Arc, you get it back instantly. You can feed into this void by like figuring out different ways to make you invisible, so that you constantly have a source of invisibility, like your melee or a dodge. Then your stasis ones recharge very fast. So yeah, probably just recommend discipline, unless you're going for like a damage super. Now, when it comes to exotics for the hunter, a lot of very unique choices. Many of them deal with some sort of gunplay. A lot of the as opposed to like the other classes, you'll have very unique ones that like increase your hand cannon damage, like Lucky Pants, or like increase sidearm damage, increasing super damage. So again, it's just like feeding more into the idea of you're focused on one target and you're going to do as much damage and kill that target as fast as possible. A lot of your Therefore, a lot of your exotics, pretty simple. Like, here, spectral blades give you more super energy. Or, like, you get a second dodge charge. So, there's a lot you can do with that, like refreshing your abilities faster, or creating another shadow clone with Strand. So, yeah, lots of different synergetic options. Fairly simple. There isn't a whole lot to like really buffing teammates, or I guess like debuffing enemies, aside from void, um, weakening and suppressing. So generally speaking, for hunters, you're going to be that you're the DPS option. You're the person who's probably going to be like getting into an area, making a save in like a grandmaster by going invisible, running up and like reviving a teammate, then making both of you invisible as you get out there. Again, hope this was fairly useful. Definitely would recommend for loadouts having at least one per subclass, just so that you can quickly switch to it, build off of it if you need to. Um, yeah, there's tons of guides online for different builds that you can make. Meta's constantly changing, and hope you all have a great day. If there's anything that I missed or you'd like to see covered additionally, by all means, let me know in comments. And yeah,